In 1974, a single phone call from a Time magazine reporter shattered the reality of a 37-year-old Hollywood king. The woman he had called sister his entire life was actually his biological mother. The woman who raised him was his grandmother. Both were already dead, taking a 37-year-old lie to their graves. How do you survive when your entire existence is built on a fabricated script? Behind the legendary sunglasses and the millions of dollars lies a twisted double life. These are the rare photos and the untold story of Jack Nicholson. Before we uncover the ashes of that family's secret, look at the empire he built. Jack Nicholson is not just an actor, he is a cultural force. With 12 Academy Award nominations and 3 golden statuettes, he holds a record that dominated Hollywood for decades. In the 1970s and 80s, his name alone guaranteed box office gold. He commanded a staggering net worth of nearly $400 million. He didn't just attend Hollywood parties, he owned them. From his infamous, heavily guarded compound on Mulholland Drive right next door to his friend and fellow icon Marlon Brando, he ruled a hedonistic kingdom. You know the terrifying axe-wielding grin in The Shining. You remember the absolute chaotic rebellion in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He created characters so unhinged and magnetic that they burned themselves into global pop culture. For half a century, his front row seat at the Lakers games and his signature dark sunglasses indoors were the ultimate symbols of Hollywood royalty. He was the ultimate bad boy, untouchable, wealthy beyond imagination, and universally adored. He had the power, the women, and the absolute worship of millions. He stood at the absolute pinnacle of human success. But when a man holds the entire world in his hands, how does he hide the fact that he doesn't even know his own bloodline? It is the spring of 1,937 inches, Neptune City, New Jersey. A baby boy arrives in a quiet, working-class neighborhood. His name is John Joseph Nicholson. You look at the early photographs of this child. He has a bright, wide smile and watchful eyes. He lives in a house dominated by strong, fiercely protective women. He believes he is the son of John and Ethel May Nicholson. Ethel May is a hard-working window dresser and a beautician. She is the absolute rock of the family. He believes he has 2 older sisters, June and Lorraine. June is an aspiring dancer, glamorous, ambitious, and often traveling for work. To the outside world, and to young Jack himself, this is a normal American family. John Nicholson, the man he is told is his father, is a heavy drinker who abandons the family shortly after Jack is born. You can imagine the heavy atmosphere of a house where the patriarch is just a fading shadow. The women immediately step up. They shield the boy. They pamper him. They build a fortress of affection around him. But fortresses are often built to keep something locked inside, not just to keep the outside world away. Growing up, Jack is the absolute center of their universe. Yet, a child's intuition is a powerful, silent radar. You can give a boy food, shelter, and constant praise, but you cannot easily erase the underlying tension of a massive, unspoken truth. June, the beautiful dancer he calls his sister, is actually his teenage mother. She gave birth to him when she was just 18 years old, unmarried, and unsure of the biological father's identity. To avoid total social ruin in the conservative climate of the 1930s, Ethel May takes the baby. She claims him as her own son. She forces the entire family into a lifelong pact of silence. Young Jack walks through his childhood home, completely unaware that the ground beneath his feet is a fabricated stage. Every interaction is layered with a protective deceit. He goes to local schools. He earns decent grades. He becomes the class clown at Manasquan High School. He uses humor as a weapon and a shield. When you do not have a father to anchor you, you learn to read the room quickly. You learn to perform for survival. You learn to make people laugh so they do not look too closely at the empty spaces in your life. He sits in the dark movie theaters of New Jersey, staring at the silver screen, captivated by the larger-than-life figures. Subconsciously, he is already learning how to wear a mask. He watches the women in his house. He loves them deeply, but he also absorbs their unspoken anxieties and their hidden burdens. Think about the psychological toll of this environment. Everyone around him knows a fundamental fact about his existence that he does not. They look at him and see the secret. He looks at them and sees his absolute reality. He idolizes June. She represents glamour and the exciting world beyond their small coastal town. When she visits from out of town, the house lights up. He craves her attention and her approval. He does not know he is actually craving the primal love of his own mother. The permanent absence of his real father leaves a different kind of void. A boy needs a map to navigate manhood. Jack has to draw his own map from scratch. He develops a rebellious streak early on. He frequently finds himself in detention. He challenges authority figures. He is restless, driven by a chaotic engine he does not fully understand. The foundation of his identity is built on shifting sand. He is loved, yes, but he is loved within the strict confines of a lie. The women who raise him do so out of a fierce, desperate love, but their fierce protection is also a quiet prison. They construct a reality for him, and he lives inside it, playing the role of the youngest child, the only boy, the favored son. He learns early on that appearances matter more than anything. He learns that the truth is simply whatever the adults agree it is. He carries this heavy, invisible lesson into his late teenage years. He is charming, he is highly intelligent, but there is a distinct distance in his eyes, a cold detachment. He is a spectator in his own life, waiting for a script that makes sense. As he reaches the age of 17, the small-town life in New Jersey begins to suffocate him. The walls of the house, thick with unspoken history, close in on him. He needs to escape. He needs to find a stage where he can control the narrative. In 1954, he packs his bags. He heads to Los Angeles to visit the woman he believes is his sister, June. He thinks he is just taking a trip across the country. He does not know he is walking away from the only reality he has ever known, straight into an industry built entirely on calculated illusions. He leaves behind the women who sacrificed their own truths for his sake. He steps onto the sun-baked streets of Hollywood, a young man with a devastating smile and a hollow core, ready to become whoever the camera needs him to be. How can a boy grow into a man of genuine substance when his entire foundation was poured from the cement of a desperate, loving deception? It is 1954. A 17-year-old boy steps off a train in Los Angeles. He thinks he is visiting his older sister June, who dances in a Las Vegas show. He does not know he is actually seeking refuge with the woman who gave birth to him. The California sun is blinding. The streets of Hollywood promise everything and guarantee nothing. Jack does not arrive as a star. He arrives as a nobody. He needs a job to survive. He walks into the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer studios, but not through the front gates of the casting office. He walks through the back doors. He takes a job as a mailroom clerk for the animation department. He works under the legendary William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. You can picture him pushing a mail cart down the long, sterile hallways. He watches the powerful producers and the glamorous actors pass by without giving him a single glance. He is completely invisible. Hanna and Barbera notice his artistic flair. They offer him a permanent position as an animator. Most young men would take the secure paycheck. Jack turns it down. He wants to be on the screen. He wants the world to look at him. He joins a theater group called The Players' Ring. He starts taking acting classes. He learns how to project his voice, how to control his body, how to wear the skin of another person. He is hungry for attention, driven by a deep, unexplainable void that only the applause of strangers can temporarily fill. But Hollywood is a brutal machine. It does not care about your hunger. For more than a decade, Jack Nicholson drowns in the shallow end of the industry. In 1958, he gets his first leading role in a low-budget teen thriller called The Crybaby Killer. He plays a desperate teenager who takes hostages. The film is cheap. It is quickly forgotten. He falls into the orbit of Roger Corman, the king of B-movies. Throughout the 1960s, Jack takes whatever roles he can get. He acts in horror films, biker movies, and cheap westerns. He works on sets where the fake blood looks like cheap paint, and the scripts are written in a few days. He plays a masochistic dental patient in The Little Shop of Horrors. He rides a motorcycle in Hell's Angels on Wheels. You watch these early films, and you see a young man trying too hard. You see the raw talent, but it is unrefined and desperate. He is aging. He watches his friends get famous while he remains stuck on the bottom rung. The rejection is relentless. The 1960s counterculture movement explodes around him, and he is just a guy trying to pay rent. By 1968, he is 31 years old. In Hollywood years, that is practically the end of the line for a struggling actor. He feels the cold grip of failure. He starts writing screenplays just to stay employed. He works behind the camera. He begins to accept a bitter reality. Maybe he is not meant to be a star. Maybe the camera does not love him. He prepares to abandon his acting dreams entirely. He prepares to fade into the background, just another discarded piece of Hollywood machinery. Then comes the year 1969. The movie is Easy Rider. The production is chaotic, fueled by drugs and massive egos. Actor Rip Torn gets into a violent argument with director Dennis Hopper and leaves the project. They need a replacement immediately. They need someone cheap. They call Jack Nicholson. They cast him as George Hansen, an alcoholic, disillusioned civil rights lawyer. This is not a glamorous leading role. It is a supporting part. But Jack steps onto the set, and something shifts. He stops trying so hard, he stops forcing the performance. He taps into his own exhaustion, his own cynical view of the world, and he puts it directly on the screen. He wears a football helmet on the back of a motorcycle. He delivers a monologue around a campfire about freedom and fear that defines an entire generation. When the film premieres, the world stops and stares. The nobody from New Jersey suddenly commands the screen. He steals the movie from its two massive stars. The critics go wild. The audience is mesmerized. He earns his first Academy Award nomination. Overnight, the B-movie actor is dead. A cinematic icon is born. The long, humiliating years of rejection vanish in the flash of a camera bulb. The studios that ignored his face now beg for his signature. He has finally arrived. He has forced the world to acknowledge his existence. He has climbed out of the dark, desperate pit of anonymity and stepped directly into the blinding center of the spotlight. He traded his absolute privacy for global adoration. He crafted a persona so magnetic that it swallowed his actual identity whole. But when you spend 10 years starving in the shadows, begging the world to look at you, do you ever stop to wonder what exactly they are going to see when the lights finally turn on? The year is 1975. You are looking at the undisputed king of Hollywood. Jack Nicholson does not just act in movies. He detonates them. He takes on the role of Randall McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He plays an anti-authoritarian criminal in a mental institution. But he is not acting. He is channeling his own lifelong rebellion against the structures that tried to cage him. The performance is a raw, electric shock to the culture. He wins his first Academy Award for Best Actor. He walks onto that stage, flashing that predatory, wolfish grin. He holds the golden statuette, and the entire world bows down. Throughout the 1970s and into the 1980s, he builds a resume that reads like a masterclass in cinematic history. Chinatown, The Shining, Terms of Endearment. He works with the greatest directors on the planet. He demands astronomical salaries. He negotiates deals that secure him a percentage of the box office profits, most famously for his role as the Joker in Batman. He walks away with tens of millions of dollars for a single film. He possesses a level of wealth and artistic freedom that most actors cannot even comprehend. He is the ultimate alpha male of the silver screen. But look away from the movie sets. Look at the private empire he constructs high above the smog of Los Angeles. He buys a sprawling, heavily guarded estate on Mulholland Drive. The media quickly dubs this stretch of road Bad Boy Drive. He lives right next door to another cinematic titan, Marlon Brando. The two men share a deep, complex friendship, bonded by their immense talent and their mutual disdain for Hollywood conformity. You can imagine the heavy iron gates of his compound. Behind those gates, Jack curates a life of absolute, unrestrained hedonism. The parties are legendary. They last for days. The guest lists include rock stars, politicians, and a never-ending parade of the world's most beautiful women. He consumes drugs and alcohol with a terrifying, limitless appetite. He treats his life like a Roman banquet, devouring every pleasure available to a man with infinite resources. He builds a public image that is incredibly seductive. He is the charming rogue. He is the eternal bachelor who refuses to be tied down. He wears his signature dark sunglasses everywhere, even indoors, even at the Academy Awards. He jokes that the sunglasses are his armor. They protect him from the blinding flashbulbs of the paparazzi. But armor is also designed to keep people out. The dark lenses hide his eyes. They prevent anyone from looking too closely at the man beneath the myth. He becomes a fixture at the Los Angeles Lakers basketball games. He sits courtside, right on the hardwood, wearing his shades and his arrogant smile. He yells at the referees. He flirts with the cheerleaders. He is more famous than the athletes on the court. This is the absolute peak of human status. He is universally loved, insanely rich, and creatively fulfilled. Yet, a life devoted entirely to pleasure is a dangerous machine. It requires constant fuel. The thrill of the parties begins to lose its edge. The faces of the women blur together in a haze of champagne and cocaine. The public sees the ultimate playboy, living a fantasy that every man secretly desires. But behind the heavy oak doors of his Mulholland mansion, the silence is deafening. He is surrounded by sycophants and paid employees. He pays for their loyalty. He buys their company. He fathers children with different women, but he struggles to maintain a stable, traditional family. How could he? His own blueprint for a family was a masterpiece of deception. The cracks begin to show in his seemingly impenetrable armor. The relentless pursuit of excess starts to take a physical and emotional toll. He gains weight. His hairline recedes. The bad boy charm sometimes crosses the line into cruel arrogance. He engages in a volatile 17-year on-and-off relationship with actress Angelica Houston. She loves him deeply, but she constantly battles his chronic infidelity. He cannot stop himself. He is driven by a compulsion to conquer, a deep-seated fear of being trapped, of being ordinary. He builds a towering monument to his own ego, brick by brick, movie by movie, dollar by dollar. He stands at the very top, looking down at the rest of humanity. He controls his narrative perfectly. He gives the public exactly what they want. They want the wild, unpredictable, brilliant Jack. But the higher you build the monument, the harder the wind blows at the top. He is a master of illusion, a man who has convinced the entire world that he is invincible. He thinks he has outrun his past. He thinks the billions of dollars and the roaring crowds can drown out the whispers of a New Jersey childhood. But when the party finally ends, and the drugs wear off, and you are sitting alone in a massive, empty mansion, staring at a wall of golden trophies, who exactly is the man staring back at you from the mirror? The year is 1974. You are 37 years old. You are standing on the absolute summit of Hollywood. Your new film, Chinatown, is about to become a masterpiece. The phone rings. A researcher from Time magazine is on the other end of the line. They are preparing a massive cover story about your life. They have dug through old public records in New Jersey. They tell you a truth that instantly shatters your entire universe. The woman you mourned as your older sister June was actually your biological mother. The woman who raised you and loved you as a mother was actually your grandmother. You hold the phone in dead silence. Both of these women are already in the ground. They took the secret to their graves. You cannot scream at them. You cannot look them in the eyes and demand an explanation. You are completely alone with a devastating realization. Your entire life up to this exact second has been a brilliantly executed stage play. You were the lead actor, but you were the only one who did not know the script. Think about the psychological violence of this moment. Every memory of your childhood is instantly rewritten. Every hug, every argument, every family dinner was layered with a desperate, suffocating lie. You realize that the people who loved you the most were also the ones who deceived you the most flawlessly. How do you ever trust another human being again? Jack Nicholson hangs up the phone. He does not break down in front of the cameras. He does not go to therapy. He does what he has spent his entire life learning how to do. He puts on a mask. He puts on the dark sunglasses. He steps back out into the blinding lights of the paparazzi, and he smiles that terrifying, predatory smile. He buries the trauma so deep inside his mind that it mutates into something dark and volatile. He tells the press that the revelation was simply a dramatic event, not a traumatic one. He calls it a psychological relief to finally understand his own history. He praises the women for their strength. But you cannot simply erase 37 years of fundamental betrayal with a clever, polished quote to a magazine. The poison seeps into his blood. The unhealed wounds begin to dictate his behavior when the cameras stop rolling. The controlled chaos of his public image begins to bleed into a very real, very destructive private anger. He becomes a man who demands total control over his environment because his own origin story was completely out of his hands. You see this hidden anger erupt violently in 1994. He is driving his car in Los Angeles. Another driver cuts him off in traffic. A normal person curses and drives away. Jack snaps. He grabs a 2-iron golf club from his trunk. He walks up to the stranger's car and repeatedly smashes the windshield in a blind, animalistic rage. He settles the criminal charges out of court for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The media laughs it off as a wild Hollywood anecdote. Just Jack being Jack. But look closer at the incident. Look at the raw fury of a man who possesses every material item on earth but still feels a massive, unfillable void tearing at his chest. He surrounds himself with legions of beautiful women, but he actively destroys his most meaningful relationships. He spends 17 turbulent years with the brilliant actress Anjelica Huston. She offers him genuine love and a chance at real stability, but he repeatedly, pathologically, betrays her. He sleeps with her friends. He leaves a trail of broken promises. He acts like a man who is terrified of true intimacy because true intimacy requires absolute honesty, and honesty is the one thing his family explicitly denied him from the moment he was born. He pushes away the people who try to anchor him. He chooses the shallow, disposable worship of strangers over the hard work of a real connection. Why do you constantly burn down the only homes that offer you shelter unless you are secretly convinced that you were always meant to wander in the dark? The breaking point finally arrives in 1989. You look at his relationship with Anjelica Huston. It has survived almost 2 decades of his public affairs and his emotional distance. She has tolerated the intolerable because she loves the broken man behind the sunglasses. But a man who hates his own origins will eventually destroy the only thing keeping him tethered to the ground. Jack invites Anjelica to dinner at a quiet, expensive restaurant in Los Angeles. He sits across from her. He takes off the sunglasses. He tells her that a young actress named Rebecca Broussard is pregnant with his child. The air in the room turns to ice. He does not offer a desperate apology. He simply states the destructive facts of his own chaotic existence. Anjelica does not just cry, she erupts. A few days later, she storms onto the set of his movie, The Two Jakes. She corners him in his trailer. She beats him with her fists. She screams at him until her voice breaks. She unleashes years of repressed agony. And then, she walks out of his life forever. Watch the aftermath of that violent emotional explosion. The parties at the heavily guarded Mulholland Drive compound suddenly stop feeling like celebrations. They start feeling like desperate attempts to fill a massive, terrifyingly silent void. The legendary bad boy of Hollywood is suddenly a man in his 50s standing alone in an empty mansion. He has fathered children with multiple women, but he has no unified family to gather around a Sunday dinner table. He has a room full of Academy Awards, but golden statues do not hold your hand in the middle of the night. He begins to suffer from severe bouts of insomnia. You can picture him wandering the long, dark hallways of his estate while the rest of Los Angeles sleeps. He looks at the millions of dollars worth of expensive art on his walls. He realizes the brutal truth. You can buy every masterpiece in the world, but you cannot purchase a single moment of genuine peace. His physical health begins to mirror his internal decay. He complains of chronic back pain. He gains more weight. The legendary charm starts to look like a tired, worn-out routine. He becomes a prisoner of the exact hedonistic lifestyle he spent his entire youth trying to achieve. He built an empire on the premise of absolute freedom. He refused to be tied down by traditional morals or conventional family expectations, but absolute freedom is often just a glamorous disguise for total isolation. He alienated the one woman who truly understood the depth of his trauma. He replaced her with a rotating cast of much younger women who only knew the Hollywood myth, never the grieving boy from New Jersey. He looks out his window at the neighboring estate of Marlon Brando. He watches his idol and closest friend slowly turn into a morbidly obese recluse, hiding from the world. Jack feels the same cold shadow creeping over his own life. The media still writes about his wild nights, but the ink is starting to dry. The public begins to see an aging king clinging to a crown that is getting far too heavy to wear. He has spent decades mastering the art of pretending to be other people. He has spent his entire adult life outrunning a devastating family lie. But when the applause finally fades, the women leave, and the massive house goes completely silent, where exactly do you run when the monster chasing you is your own reflection? The late 1990s arrive. The endless parties begin to slow down. You cannot outrun time forever, even if you are the absolute king of Los Angeles. Jack Nicholson looks in the mirror and sees a man crossing into his 60s. The wolfish grin is still there, but the eyes behind the sunglasses carry the heavy weight of a lifetime of running. He makes a profound choice. He stops trying to play the eternal playboy. He takes the deep, unhealed wounds of his past and finally puts them directly in front of the camera. Watch his performance in As Good as It Gets. He plays Melvin Udall, an obsessive, compulsive, miserable, and profoundly lonely writer who alienates everyone around him. He wins his 3rd Academy Award for this role. Look at his work in About Schmidt. He plays a retired, bitter old man staring into the terrifying abyss of an empty, meaningless future. He strips away the legendary charm and exposes the raw, ugly vulnerability underneath. He is no longer acting, he is confessing. He is showing the world exactly what it feels like to be a man who possesses everything but understands nothing about true connection. The turning point becomes even sharper when the ghosts begin to claim his closest friends. In 2004, his neighbor and idol Marlon Brando dies. The loss strikes him like a physical blow. The titans of his generation are fading into the earth. The era of the untouchable cinematic bad boys is officially ending. He walks through his massive compound on Mulholland Drive. The silence is no longer just a symptom of a hangover. The silence is permanent. He realizes that the clock is running out. The anger that fueled his youth, the rage over the magnificent lie of his childhood, finally begins to exhaust itself. You cannot spend your entire life fighting shadows that have already vanished into the grave. He begins to speak differently about the women who deceived him. He stops calling it a betrayal. He stops looking at his origin story as a tragedy. He publicly states that he feels deep gratitude because his grandmother and his mother gave him life and protected him from the crushing social stigma of the 1930s. He forgives them. He chooses to see their desperate, lifelong lie as the ultimate act of maternal love. This quiet acceptance triggers a different kind of rebirth. The man who spent decades terrified of traditional family structures slowly begins to try and rebuild them. He reaches out to his children. He tries to become the steady presence that his own biological father never was. He brings them to the Lakers games. He lets them see the vulnerable, aging man behind the Hollywood myth. He cannot erase the years of absence, and he cannot undo the pain he caused their mothers. But he stops running. He stops trying to fill the void with strangers and alcohol. He learns how to sit quietly in an empty room. He learns how to exist without the constant, deafening roar of public adoration. The transition is brutal, but it is necessary. He sheds the armor that protected him for half a century. He finally accepts that he is just John Joseph Nicholson from New Jersey, a boy who survived a chaotic beginning to conquer the world, only to realize the world was never the thing he actually needed to conquer. What do you do when the final act of your life requires you to strip away the greatest character you ever created, just so you can finally learn how to play yourself? The year 2010 marks the quiet end of an era. Jack Nicholson makes his final on-screen appearance in a forgettable romantic comedy. He does not announce a grand Hollywood retirement. He does not throw a massive farewell party. The man who once consumed all the oxygen in the room simply stops showing up. He retreats completely behind the heavy iron gates of his Mulholland Drive compound. The legendary Bad Boy Drive is now just a quiet, lonely stretch of road. His closest friends and neighbors, men like Marlon Brando, have all passed away. He is the last titan standing in a kingdom of ghosts. He lives alone in a massive mansion filled with millions of dollars worth of rare art. The paparazzi rarely catch a glimpse of him. When they do, they photograph an elderly man sitting quietly on a balcony, staring out at the Los Angeles skyline. The wild, predatory energy of the 1970s is entirely gone. Cruel rumors begin to swirl around the city. Whispers of severe memory loss leak into the tabloids. Hollywood insiders claim he can no longer memorize the lines of a script. His few remaining friends fiercely deny the stories. They tell the press he is simply enjoying a peaceful, well-earned retirement. They say his mind is still sharp. But the absolute silence from the Nicholson camp is deafening. He is occasionally seen sitting courtside at the Lakers games with his son. He still wears the signature dark sunglasses indoors. He still flashes a shadow of that famous grin, but he moves much slower now. He looks like a retired general surveying a battlefield he no longer wishes to command. The millions of fans who once worshipped his chaotic rebellion now look at him with a quiet, respectful sadness. You watch the physical decline of a cultural icon, and you realize that no amount of wealth or fame can buy a single extra second of youth. But you must look beyond the aging physical shell. You must look at the massive, indestructible legacy he leaves behind. He leaves behind a fractured but healing family tree. He tries to give his children the steady presence that he was denied. He ensures they are provided for, attempting to break the cycle of abandonment that defined his own arrival into the world. Jack Nicholson fundamentally changed the art of American cinema. He did not just pretend to be broken, cynical men. He used the very real, very raw trauma of his own fabricated childhood to breathe authentic life into those characters. He took the deep psychological confusion of a boy who did not know his own mother, and he weaponized it for his art. He gave the world some of the most complex, terrifying, and magnetic performances in history. He showed an entire generation of actors that you do not have to be perfectly heroic to be a leading man. You just have to be fiercely, unapologetically honest about your own inner darkness. He built an empire out of his own broken pieces. But when the legacy is finally cemented in gold, and the cameras are permanently turned off, what happens to the aging man who must spend his final years sitting alone in a museum of his own past? Think about those iconic dark sunglasses one last time. For half a century, the world thought they were just a symbol of Hollywood cool. We thought they were the ultimate accessory of a man who did not care about the rules. But maybe they were something entirely different. Maybe they were the last remaining defense mechanism of a little boy from New Jersey. A boy who stepped into the blinding light of the world, only to discover that the people holding his hands were wearing masks. He put on the shades to protect himself from a reality that lied to him from his very first breath. The true story of Jack Nicholson is not about the 3 Academy Awards. It is not about the $400 million, the endless parties, or the legendary romances. It is about the terrifying cost of survival. It is about a man who discovered that his entire foundation was an illusion, and instead of letting it destroy him, he used it to conquer the world. He took the ultimate betrayal and turned it into the ultimate performance. He played every role perfectly, until the only role left was himself. The applause eventually stops. The glamorous parties fade into the dark. The movie sets are torn down. What remains is just a quiet house on a hill, and a man finally sitting in peace with his own truth. The greatest trick Jack Nicholson ever pulled was not convincing the world he was a bad boy. It was convincing himself that he could survive the hardest truth of all.